Okay, welcome everyone to Black Men Speak. I'm your co-host, the J.R. Stewart.
And I'm your co-host, D. Tommy D. Duncan III, otherwise known as TD3 Jimmy. It is Wednesday, May the 17th, 2023, Jimmy. And if it's Wednesday night,
It's certainly Black Men Speak. So let's give a big shout out to Liquid for providing our theme music. And if you haven't already, please hit that like button to help our numbers. Hit the subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. And then the third thing we would like for you to do is if you're here watching the show tonight, invite a friend or two. And so spread the word and share the information. And that way you guys will have something interesting to talk about afterwards. With that being said, Tom, let's jump in because we have a packed show tonight. We have a lot of things to cover.
yes, absolutely, Jimmy. We have a lot on the agenda for this evening. We're looking for everybody's input and feedback, of course. Feel free to join us on the chat line and provide your thoughts and questions on that platform so that we can get any information in that you'd like to share with us, any questions you'd like to ask during the show. And let's kind of talk about our agenda for this evening. We are going to continue talking about a few stories that we talked about last week. Of course, we had the choking death of Jordan Neely on the New York City subway that has happened a few weeks ago now. We also talked about the task force recommendations for reparations in the state of California. We talked about this a couple of months ago, Jimmy. I think it was just March, but John Morant is in the news again for
Yes,
flashing a gun on social media while hanging out with one of his buddies. And I don't know if the lesson has been learned there, Jimmy, but we got to talk about that because it'll be interesting to see what the NBA does. But the question is, as parents, as folks within our community, what should we be talking about as it pertains to this? Of course, this week, if you did not know, we're going to take a couple of minutes to honor and acknowledge the great thought leader and advocate for human rights, Malcolm X, whose birthday is this week. And then, of course, Jimmy, there are a couple of young people that we'd like to honor and celebrate. Um, Haley Taylor Swift, who is the youngest student to graduate from law school at SMU here in Texas, and then a couple of young ladies in the New Orleans area who have purportedly solved a potentially what was thought to be impossible math problem. So we're going to talk about a little black girl magic.
yes. Um, and okay, so let's get rocking and rolling here. Like I said, we have a full show tonight. Our phone number is posted on the clipboard here on the dashboard. And so when you call in, I think there's an IVR there, so you have to make a selection. You can become a subscriber to our text messaging service by entering, I think, the number two. If you want to be sent to the show, I think it's option one. But anyway, listen to the instructions and follow them if you call in. Also, we're going to a black business that we're going to support and give a shout out to. And we're going to also have a prize. We're giving away a hotel stay, 4 days, 3 nights to the city of New Orleans. And so, Tom, we will either have to have someone call in, the first person call in when we play our New Orleans theme song, Mardi Gras theme song, or if you know the meaning of the chorus to the song, if you know the definition of what it means, then be the first person to call with the right answer, and you'll win the prize. With that being said, Tom, let's jump in. Also, we're going to add to the list of people to recognize. There's a fallen officer in Chicago, a black lady who was ambushed when she came home from work. Her name was Officer Preston, and so we certainly want to let the family and her family and loved ones know that she is in our thoughts and with our prayers. And it's very unfortunate, Tom, that it happened to her. But we want to make sure that all lives truly do matter in this particular case, not just some. Anyway, let's get rocking and rolling.
All right, we'd like to welcome D.R. Vining, who is on our chat line. Welcome to the show night tonight. We want to thank you very much for joining us. Of course, Uncle Kavilon out of the Austin area. We want to thank you for joining us tonight. The chat line is open. The dial-in number is available for those who would like to chat in or call in to express their thoughts or ask questions for tonight's show. What we'll do, I think, on the front end, Jimmy, is talk very briefly about one of my heroes growing up, which is the great Malcolm X, whose birthday is this week. He was born on May the 19th, 1925. So this actually would have been his 98th birthday if he were not taken out by an assassin's bullet in 1965. Jimmy, he is, I think, an appreciated but still unheralded hero within not just our community, but within America and globally, because he was one who advocated for human rights, not just in the United States, but globally. He was one who definitely believed in building your own economy, owning your own destiny, and taking care of your own, Jimmy. So Malcolm X, by far, is one of my great heroes growing up.
Yeah, same here, Tom, for those reasons. Plus, he has a special place for me for additional reasons in that. To me, growing up, Malcolm X was what I considered a real man. He was a pioneer. He was strong. He was outspoken. He lived his life, it seemed, without fear. And so we know his backstory. And to me, we're now flooded. I mean, there are no more Malcolm X anymore.
No,
Um, we don't seem to make real men anymore. They're not fathers in the household to raise young men to be strong men, and we seem to have a proliferation by society to weaken men with with this toxic masculinity nonsense and this growing effort to produce beta men. So Malcolm X was a real man. He was an alpha male. I wish, Tom, that we would get back to the days where fathers were in the household taking care of the children and responsibility, like Malcolm did, but also being willing to stand up for what they believed is right. And it wasn't easy for a man like Malcolm X or any man who pretty much worshiped Elijah Muhammad to find out that this was a flawed individual and to have to break away from the organization, the Nation of Islam. But that just goes to show what a real man will do when he has to do at times. Always stand up for what's right. So yes, we applaud Malcolm X.
yes. And all that being said is Malcolm X's father, Earl Little, was assassinated when he was a very young man, and his mother was responsible for raising a lot of children growing up. Of course, Malcolm got into trouble at a very early age, but always had an intelligent intellect when he was in school. Jimmy, I think he was He was voted president of his class when he was in grammar school, but unfortunately, the teacher did not acknowledge and or recognize his intellect, and told him instead of being a lawyer, which is what he wanted to be,
Desire to be a lawyer. That's correct.
exactly.
It needs to
And
be a
so
porter on the train or a shoe shine. Something meaningless. But anyway, Tom, that is still taking place today.
it is,
There's
and we have a
nothing.
story that speaks to that as well.
Yeah, so young black boys are the smartest and most gifted on the front end of the school system in the first grade. But by the time they get to sixth grade, they're at the back of the class, being put in remedial classes, and then being labeled as problem children. So um, the fact that the school system is failing black boys, and like I said, now there are no black fathers around to protect the black boys. The mothers are doing the best they can, but there's only so much they can do. They're really more concerned with the black daughters than the black boys. Black boys are being left behind time. And that same process of just a pathway to prison is still in place because the school system is failing and not failing to challenge our young black boys. And the sad thing, Tom, is that since Malcolm X, we should have learned something from Malcolm X experience. But it seems like we haven't learned anything because we continue to let this happen. But we're going to talk about a couple of young ladies that this did happen to, and one of them just happens to be a lawyer. So why don't we just segue into that story, Tom? The youngest longest person to graduate from law school at
Yes,
the age of
19,
19, I believe. Yeah,
19.
she went to now, Tom. She went to law school at the age of 16,
Yes,
which means she had to have graduated undergraduate
yes.
by the age of
Educated.
16.
I think she
And
went to college. She went to college at 13, graduated 16, went to law school, and now she just graduated. I believe it was May the 13th from SMU School of Law.
so she is the youngest, I believe, the youngest law school graduate in the country. Tom. So this
Correct.
just shows, Tom, what our kids are capable of doing. I'm so sick and tired of hearing people make excuses for why their children can't learn. You know, the system this and systemic racism that. But if you truly have a desire, Tom, I don't care how racist the teachers are, I don't care how bad the school system are. If you have a desire to achieve something and get ahead, you can do it. It's just a matter of which path you choose and whether you have the fortitude to stay on that path. But anyway, let's play a short video of her. Um, yeah, let's play a short video of her, and then we'll pick it up on the backside.
Let's let them roll.
Welcome back. My next guest caught my eye when I saw a quote that she tweeted one morning. I saw it. Essence.com had it up. Haley Taylor Swift said, "You don't find your path, you make it." Haley's been blazing her own trail since she was accepted to 9 law schools. At the age of 16, now at just 19 years old, she's back in the news for becoming the youngest African-American co-ed to ever graduate law school in the United States. Please welcome Haley Taylor Schlitz in her first live TV interview since she got her diploma. Oh my God.
Okay.
All right, Jimmy. And before we get moving on that, I'd like to welcome a couple of more folks on
Okay.
the chat line. Quincy Griggs, my cuz, one of my mentors when I was very young. Quincy Griggs out of the Atlanta, Georgia area, who has actually referred a couple of people who have been on our social. We want to thank him for joining us tonight. And then my cousin, the counselor, the most recent vice president of the Austin Black Lawyers Association, I believe they're called, Miss Elisa Patton, has joined us tonight as well.
Yes, welcome, one of our faithfuls. So we appreciate the patronage.
Yeah, and actually with this young lady, something very interesting in doing my research on her. I believe when she was in the 5th grade, she was acting out in the public school, and as it turns out, her parents ended up taking her to a pediatric doctor, and what they discovered is that the girl was extremely gifted and talented, but
She was bored, Tom.
the school was for whatever reason would not test her for the talented and gifted
Right.
program. And so the parents took control of the situation, ended up taking her out of the school, homeschooling her, and then everything else is in the rearview mirror. And so that is a message to a lot of our parents, because a lot of
Tom, a lot of our kids are misdiagnosed with having learning disabilities and problem children, and really they're just bored. They're not being challenged enough. The work is not, the teachers are not putting the challenge in front of them for them to rise up to. And so this young girl fits that classic model of not being challenged in school, so she acted out. But I'm glad her parents took her out of the situation and dealt with it themselves.
And it's unfortunate, Jimmy, because if we look at not just this young lady, there is no telling what would have happened if her parents would not have intervened on her
She would have
path.
been lost, Tom. We know what would have happened. She would have
Exactly.
been lost to the streets.
And the reason that I know this, Jimmy, is because I happen to have a mother who worked for the federal government, the Department of Education, and she used to travel the country looking at cases where we had a lot of young people, a lot of young black men who were bored in their classes, but they were
Yes,
being railroaded into remedial
that's
classes
correct, Tom.
in their schools. And in essence, their futures were being destroyed, possibly similar to what could have happened to this young lady if her parents did not take control of the situation. But a lot of our young people, young men and young women, are being railroaded into remedial classes and their futures deliberately being destroyed. But this young lady's parents were able to intervene on her behalf. And this young lady she is now in the history books, Jimmy, and we're looking for great
Yes,
things from her. She has her goals set before her. And to your point, Jimmy, you have to own your path, but sometimes parents do have to get involved, and they can't always take what the teacher is saying at surface level because they don't always, unfortunately, have your kid's best interest at heart.
They do not, Tom. That's not, let's not just necessarily put down the teaching system, the educational system. People operate in their own best interest, and they're our kids are our interest, and so they need to be at the top of our interest. Um, and so, expecting that the school system run by other people is going to have our best interest at heart, they may, they may not. But regardless, we have to do what we have to do. With that being said, Tom, let's move on to two other very gifted young students
Yes,
down in the city of New Orleans. I
more black girl
believe,
magic.
yeah, yes. So we have a short video for them also. Let's play that, and then we'll pick it up on the backside.
Sounds good.
Geometry class and learning the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. If you remember the formula but not its purpose, you certainly are not alone. But two high schoolers from New Orleans may have found a proof. Joining us now are Kelsey Johnson and Nikaya Jackson. Ladies, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so let's start with the basics. While your proof has not gone through the academic peer review process or been confirmed by other experts in the field, it also has not been dismissed or debunked. Explain to us what a proof is, because I remember, and to be honest, I actually loved algebra, but I was terrible at geometry. So let's just start with the basics of what a proof is and how long you've been working on it.
Well, basically, a proof is just an explanation of why the thing is. For example, like if you wanted to prove why something is, that's basically like we're not saying that we created the theorem. We're just making a new way to get to the answer of explaining why a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So it's an explanation.
And Kelsey, you ladies presented your proof at the American Mathematical Society annual Southeastern Conference. Take us back to that day and how you prepared.
Well,
Anyway, that is those two young ladies. They've done remarkable work. So let me just say this, Tom. Part of the, because you learn this in geometry, you learn this in trig, and you learn this in high school math when you learn algebra, when you learn the Pythagorean theorem in algebra, that the belief was is that you can't use what they call circular logic
Correct.
to prove that that's correct. So you can't take geometry and where you do a lot of well, you used to do proofs. When you and I were coming through high school, doing proofs in geometry was just part of the course. It was a class that really helped you, taught you how to think. I don't think they do proofs anymore in school. They don't. They're not concerned with teaching these kids how to think. They just want them to regurgitate information. But with that being said, you can't use circular logic to prove the Pythagorean theorem. So trying to prove that with a proof. Um, and from what I understand about these two young ladies, they didn't use circular logic. They really found another way to do a proof dealing with angles and circles that was outside of that was part of geometry because they used the proof method to prove it, but they didn't use the circular logic that normally mathematicians say that you can't do. So congratulations to these young ladies. I believe I don't know if they've declared where they're going to go to college, but I think wherever they go, they're going to do quite well for themselves.
Yes, absolutely, Jimmy. It will be very interesting. And, we want to continue to put our arms around these young ladies, our young people, especially those, not just those who are showing promise, but all of our young people. But we have to celebrate this, Jimmy, because no one else is if we're not going to do it. Also want to welcome Miss LaShawn Jasper to our show. I think she may be a first timer. We want to thank her for joining us tonight. And also, you started talking before I finished up with the young lady who just finished SMU Law School. She is also a part of the Divine Nine, a part of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. So congratulations.
Really?
Yes, sir. So congratulations to her again, and another asset to the Divine Nine.
Wow. Okay. And with that being said, Tom, I hope that this proves the myth that women and girls can't do math.
STEM.
I mean, because I think they were at a math fair or a science fair,
Yes.
and a teacher actually put this challenge out there knowing that it couldn't be proven. But it was going to be an exercise to see just who would take the challenge and how far they would get. And these two young ladies accepted the challenge, and no one expected them to come back with anything that was even possibly close to proving the Pythagorean theorem was correct using geometry.
But
So,
they didn't know it couldn't be proved, Jimmy. And that's
well, that is true, Tom. And that sometimes intelligent ignorance, when you don't know something or know you don't know that you can't do it, is when things really happen. And so we have to stop believing people tell us that our children can't compete with the Asian kids, that we need special consideration, we need a hand up. And the reality is, we just need people to get out of our way and let our children do what they naturally do, which is they're very capable of learning at a very high level, Tom, and performing at a high level if they're challenged and pushed in that direction.
absolutely. And I will co-sign with our good friend Uncle Assar said African genius, more African genius. And that is a part, obviously, of his money because our brother Assar also has a podcast, African Genius Podcast. So those who are out there, if you've not had a chance, make sure you search on African Genius Podcast and support our good friend Uncle Assar, our cable line, and his colleague who is in South Africa, by the way.
Yes. Also, we giving shout outs for support, Tom. Let's not forget about the commish and his radio show.
Yes,
Let's give a shout
brother
out.
Ed Gray. I don't know
Yes.
if Ed is on tonight, but also brother Ed Gray, the commish, and he focuses on politics and history as well. So we want to support him as well. And also, it looks like we have our good friend Bill Nicholson, who is on the chat line as well. We want to thank you, Bill, for joining us tonight.
Okay.
Ed is online, so we want to, of course, support
Okay.
him and his commish radio show as well.
Every Saturday, people. And probably next week, Tom, I will be joining a. I've joined a consulting group, business360.com. They're they're a business coaching service, and they will be kicking off a podcast every Monday at 7 p.m.,
Mm.
which I will be on. So I will give more information about that when it happens.
Good deal. Let's go to a couple of stories that are follow up, Jimmy. We didn't get a chance to talk with them about it very much last week, but we talked, of course, briefly about the choking death of Jordan Milley in the New York City subway incidents. We talked briefly about that. We have a brief update on that. So let's talk about that very briefly, find out where things are. Obviously, we don't know how long this process is going to take, but it looks like the man who is responsible for the death of Jordan Neely has been taken into custody. He turned himself in, and I believe it is manslaughter. Uh,
It's second degree manslaughter, which, Tom, now I'm not a lawyer. I did go to law school. I'm not a lawyer. But I think there are elements to manslaughter that have to be proven.
right,
There's two in this particular case. One, did he act reasonably? Did he have a reasonable expectation to believe that he or those around him were in danger? The second was the action that he took. Was that reasonable? The chokehold. And those two elements are going to have to be proven. Personally, I believe that the DA in this case overcharged the case. They probably should have went with just reckless abandonment, because there's only one element to that crime. Now, there's less time if you're convicted of it, but there's only one element, which is, was the action that you took reasonable or not? And I think, since a person died, then we could probably say that the action itself wasn't reasonable. But
correct,
the other element that they're going to have to prove for second degree manslaughter is whether this was reasonable to believe that you were in danger or the public was in danger. And since three people got involved in trying to restrain this person, several people have come out. Some have said that they didn't feel like they were in danger. Some felt like their life was in danger because he talked about dying, talking about going to jail. He have to care if he goes to jail for the rest of his life. Generally, that implies that you're going to do something really horrendous if you feel that you may go to jail for the rest of your life or that you may die. So, that's going to be that element there is going to be very tough to prove for the DA. It's going to be an uphill battle, and I suspect that either this person is going to be acquitted or this is going to be overturned on appeal if he is convicted, because he is a New Yorker, so it's not like this is a Republican from out of town. This is a native New Yorker, military person. So we'll see what happens.
yes, we definitely will see what happens. Obviously, there have been a lot of protests, a lot of young folks who, have been out in the streets, and it took that. in order for charges, unfortunately, in this case, to be drawn up. I think initially he was taken in, he was questioned, and then he was let go to his
Yes.
home. And it wasn't until people started protesting and saying, hey, what's wrong with this? I mean, there's a person who's dead here. So are you telling me we're just going to go around and start killing people?
No, Tom, we're not going to just go around killing people, but
Yes, and the thing about it is, when you think about threat, and depending on who you're talking to, there were no weapons found on this guy. Obviously, he was having a mental health crisis on there. He acknowledged that he was hungry, he was thirsty. You know, he was having a mental health incident there. But the question is, did that require him to die at the hands of someone?
obviously that argument is easy to make, Tom, and the answer is no. It didn't warrant him dying,
No,
but
it didn't.
that does not mean that he was not culpable in some of the what happened with the outcome. It certainly does not mean that it was unreasonable for people to fear that they were in danger at that time. They don't,
Restraint is one thing, kill is another.
well, Tom, once again, killing, murder is wrong. Killing, depending on whether it's justified or not, can be wrong and maybe it can not be wrong. So we have to kind of be careful with colorful language. So let's kind of
I didn't say
stick.
murder, I said
I
kill.
know you said killing, but we also have to keep in mind that sometimes killings can be justified. And so this will play out in court, and we will see what happened, what's presented in the testimony. But we certainly cannot neglect or discount, Tom, the fear that people. You're talking about a subway train that's underground. It's not like you can just get off because you don't like the company. So you are trapped in there, and so the people who had a fear, their fears are real, and so we just can't dismiss them and say, your fears are not real, and you shouldn't have been concerned. It was just a hungry person who was mentally ill. A hungry person who's mentally ill could still harm you. Um, so we got to keep that in mind.
Well, it remains to be seen.
Okay.
And of course, we have another story that we're following up on, which, of course, the task force recommendations in California, in order to pay the descendants of those who were descendants of being enslaved in California reparations as well.
Okay. And my feelings on this, Tom.
Yes, I do.
Which is that I think the whole thing is ludicrous. First of all, just on our basic jurisprudence, um, generally we have a system where we reward damages to try to make people whole. And my mother and my uncles and aunts, I mean, they grew up in East Texas. They picked cotton. My mother can tell you until we
So
tell
did mine.
stories about the those burlap sacks that they use, sacks that they used to put cotton in, how much they had to pick every day to make their 10 or 15 cents a pound to raise money to keep their households going. Tom, I have never picked cotton before. I've never been a slave. I don't even know if I've been subject to much discrimination. I probably have and just didn't notice it because I don't focus on things like that. I don't worry about the sickness and mental shortcomings of other people. And so, if you're stupid enough to be a racist and think that the color of a person's skin has anything to do, especially with inferiority, when really the science that we don't talk about shows that black people are not inferior to white people. Black people are actually somewhat superior, but that's another story. Um, I've just never felt that I was victimized. So I don't look for anyone to make me whole, but with some hope of reparation. I consider myself a pretty whole person already and pretty talented. With that being said, I just think this is an election ploy. We're coming up on election season yet again, and the white liberal Democrat and their black minions need something to get black people motivated. You can't get us motivated about the school system that you run for us when you're not educating our kids. You can't run on what you did about reforming the criminal justice system, those sentencing guidelines that black people complained about for so many years, because it was a white Republican who actually addressed that, not any kind of Democrat. In fact, we voted for the very man who wrote those guidelines. I mean, how ass backwards is that? Um,
So, Jimmy,
and
what you're saying or what you're suggesting is that 240 some odd years of free labor has no legal boundaries for compensation.
okay, Tom, let's make sure we get this accurate from 1659 is when slavery was actually legalized
Mhm.
in America to 1860 is not 40 and some years of slavery.
I didn't say 400.
What did you say?
I said 200.
Okay, then 200 years of slavery. And yes, Tom, that's exactly what I'm saying because the very first person to own a slave was a black man, and the very first people to actually be enslaved. And I'm not talking about indentured servitude. I'm actually talking about actual slavery.
Who
Permanent.
sanctioned slave? But the question is, who sanctioned it? We're not talking about individual slavers. What we're talking about the sanctioning of
Okay, let's talk about the sanctioning.
right.
So you had 2% of white people in the South who owned slaves. You had 2% of free blacks who owned slaves.
Mhm.
You had about 3% of Indians who owned slaves.
Mhm.
The only group that was in America in the South at that time who did not own slaves were the Mexicans and people who migrated here from Mexico. So the Mexicans are the only ones who really get a pass. And so when you talk about blame,
Legal enslavement, Jimmy.
right?
That doesn't
But
happen
Tom,
to individuals.
okay,
We're talking about, about institutions.
once again, let's see. We have this argument. This is why I said we need to have a discussion about race. When Eric Holder said that we're not ready for it, we are, because I am.
That's right.
So let's put this on a basis of truth.
Okay.
Slavery is not an American invention. In
Oh, I know
fact,
that. We never said it was American.
the only aspect of
Never
slavery that was uniquely American was the eradication of slavery. The way we got rid of slavery. Nobody was talking about ending slavery on the world stage anywhere in the world until the Birch Society and a few other people decided to be anti-slavery, and that slavery had to go because it was not that we were not living up to our words and all men are created equal. With that being said, Tom, everybody had this is American history. It's
Of
not
course.
white American history.
No, it's American. We're not talking about white or black
And
Americans. We're talking about
okay,
American history.
so you've had people who were subject by force, and mainly because they were
Forcibly
victim.
taken from their land. They did not immigrate here. They did not
Right.
voluntarily come over here.
So thank you for expanding on it. So let me
Correct.
just finish the statement. You have people, Irish, Chinese, black people, Africans, and even some white people, Indians. You have a lot of people who were exploited by the system of slavery.
Mhm.
The people who ended up being adversely affected the most were black people because they didn't have a land. They couldn't escape into the population and just assimilate and disappear. They couldn't. They didn't know the land well enough, like the Indians, to escape. Experiment with
If it was their
enslavement.
land in the first place,
Okay, and
before it
then
was taken by force.
of course we didn't have slavery did not was outlawed in California, and so that's where a lot of Chinese ended up escaping to and moving to get away from slavery. So what that left is the Africans who didn't have a homeland to go back to, did not know the land to escape, and could not assimilate into the population. So they were just pretty much trapped. There were no reservations, no carve outs of land for them to go to. But that doesn't mean that this is not an American problem. All of our hands are soiled by slavery, Tom, white people and black. So, like I said, 2% of the free blacks in the South
Hear me.
own slaves.
It would not have happened without the legal sanctioning of the government.
Tom, slavery was going to happen in America just like slavery happened every place else around the world.
And what I'm saying is, just like some of the slave owners got reparations, what about those who were enslaved or the descendants of those who were enslaved?
What slave owners got reparations, Tom? When General Sherman was burning down plantations from Kentucky all the way to Georgia.
And then when some of the land was given to those Africans, the so-called 40 acres and a mule, and then Africans started selling there. Then what happened? The government allowed them.
No, Tom.
Yes, it
Okay,
is.
let's clarify this. So this is where you and I differ because hold on, Tom, hold on. Because some people only want to give a part of the truth to make the story digestible.
We're not talking about the truth, Jim.
So let's tell the whole truth here. So the 40 acres was basically confiscated land from slave owners, which is true. And that land was divvied up and given to a lot of freed slaves after slavery during Reconstruction. It was white liberal Democrats, Tom, in the South, once Reconstruction ended, that took the land back. Took the land
And
back.
let's talk about the truth. A deal made between the Democrats and the Republican Party.
Yes, Tom, because Reconstruction Army could not stay in the South forever. At some point, these people have to go home. They have families too. Sitting there policing the
Just like
South.
the Africans had
Once the country was reunited and there was a belief that, okay, this is going on far enough. Now we can end Reconstruction. The Union Army can go home. We don't have to occupy and be a police state to the South. So yes, that deal was made because we're going to keep an army and occupy the South forever.
Well, you know what? If you can protect the white folks in that land, then you can protect.
But the point is how much of an extent that we're willing to go not to blame the actual people who took the land from the black people, which were white Democrats. So let's just state it for what it is.
You had white Democrats and white Republicans negotiating deals.
You had no white Republic. You had a country that was negotiating peace, Tom, to bring an end to the Civil War
on the backs of Africans
and bring an end to occupation of the South. Like I said, you could not keep that going on forever. So what would be the alternative?
What you could do, if you're going to provide reparations or repair for what was done economically to Africans, then what you do, if you're going to give them land or if you're going to give them money or whatever resources you're going to give them, you need to make sure that not only that they are enfranchised, but they are protected just like other folks were as well. When those Africans were freed, they didn't have money. They didn't have weapons. They didn't have protection. That is why those who were armed, their former enslavers, were able to go in.
The white liberals were armed, white liberal Democrats, and the KKK, which they started to basically suppress the black vote. So let's just tell the truth for what it is and stop defending that skank party that we vote for 95% of the time.
It's not a matter.
It is, Tom. It is for me.
What it is
I don't want to tell partial
out
truth.
The country.
I don't want to tell
Republicans and Democrats.
But answer this question. Answer this question. How long could the Union Army stand occupying the South? When we're supposed to be now united and being put back together, we have a system of laws. And if we're now the law and we're elected government and we're not a police force, we're now the city council, the government, we're now the local government here and we're now all one country. How long could you justify? Okay, Tom, whether we were or not, people believed that and that's what they were fighting to achieve. The Civil War was over. Reconstruction had to come to an end at some point. But look at the history books. Even liberal historians admit that the greatest period of progress for black people in America was during Reconstruction. We had people who were part of government, Tom. They were part of the government from the federal level to the state level to the city level. We owned land, we had stores, we actually did stuff for ourselves. That was the greatest expansion of progress for black people. And it was taken away from us, Tom, by white liberals, Democrats, and who are still subjecting us to their principles of Jim Crow, the pig laws, and the black codes. Nothing has changed with these people. They've always felt that black people were inferior to them. They destroyed our schools, Tom. They took jobs away from black men with conspiring with the unions to take jobs away from black men when black men were the most employed group in America at the turn of the century in the 1900s. We had the best. We started off with some of the best schools in the arguably in the world, Tom, but certainly in the country. There were only like one private school in the East Coast that compete with the four black schools that were created at that time, because these black schools were just kicking ass and taking names, like these young girls that we talked about today. It was a white liberal Democrat, Tom, who destroyed that. Not just, it didn't stop there, infected black men with syphilis, sterilized black women with their with these abortion clinics they claim with it still takes place today in the destruction of the black family with the war on poverty and taking black men out of the black home, Tom. This has not changed, Tom.
It is 8:40, and we do still have a couple more things.
We do, Tom, but we need to make sure that we always identify who our enemy is, because as long as we think that our enemy is our friend, nothing's going to change.
We're not going to resolve this today.
No, we're not going to resolve it, Tom. What
I'm suggesting is
the message is not going to change that white Democrat skank party is not our friend.
Either way, folks can do their history and the research for themselves.
No, but no, they don't, though, Tom. It's not like they hide this in the history books. This is stuff is freely available.
That's what I said. That's what I just said.
But our folks do not read, Tom. We're not going to educate ourselves. So this is not anything that we want to learn for ourselves. So to say that, Like Chris Rock said, if you want to keep something from black people, put it inside a book.
Well, Jimmy, I don't think that applies to a lot of us.
That applies to 95% of us who
No,
vote
I
for that.
wouldn't agree. I'm not. No, I'm not going. I'm not going to take that. Not 95.
Okay.
No, sir.
95%.
I know too many people who do read, who do the research. So no, it does not apply to 95.
Then there's no way possible, Tom, that you can read and do your research on that skank party and then turn around and vote for them.
Jimmy,
There's no way possible.
Jimmy, this is not, Tom. Jimmy.
That's not even human possible, Tom, to say something like that. That is so far beyond belief. That's one of these cases where if you want to use the rules of Ebonics, when people say, well, what exactly do when a person says "nigga, please," what does that really mean? What that means is that the person made a statement that's so outrageous, so ridiculous. And Tom, this is where we are. There's no way you could read, study, and research the history of that skank party and then turn around and vote for them after all they've done for the black people. Even today, Tom, this same president who wrote those sentencing guidelines that we voted for 92% of the time, 92% of the black voters what he received. And that's the same man who wrote those guidelines that we complained about. First thing he does when he get in office is unfund $30 billion away from black schools. And somehow you're going to convince me that our people are somehow well-read and educated about the history of that party? And yet we vote for them?
That's fine. And the Republicans are going to save black people. So let's move forward.
Okay, Tom, they may not save black people. They haven't done anything to hurt you. So, and we can go through history and compare lick for lick, tick for tick, talk for talk.
That's beyond the scope of what we're here to do.
I know it is. So let's move on to
John.
Huh? Oh no, we have something else to talk about besides John, don't we?
Well, you know what? We got about 20, a little bit less than 20 minutes. Let's talk about that because we have a couple of things we got to do.
Well, one more thing I want to talk about, and we can do it briefly, then we can move on to Jai. Although I don't think the Jai thing is really a big deal, Tom, because
it is a big deal, Jimmy.
Tom, that state has open carry law.
I understand it, but it has nothing to do with open carry law. That's
okay. Tom, did he break the law? It may not have been good judgment
as it pertains to the NBA.
Yeah, it may not have been good judgment. No, the NBA can't outlaw guns. You carrying a gun, Tom?
No, not carrying a gun. We're not talking about carry. We're talking about what we call not just in the NBA but the NFL when we start talking about code of conduct.
Okay, code of conduct, which they can govern that to some degree.
And really, the more important thing isn't even just whether he broke the law in Tennessee, which is an open carry law, but the question that we're talking about here is the impact because it has an influence on our young people, the images that our young
people. We celebrate thug life. That is true.
And what I'm telling you is this, the conversation that we're having is not whether he literally broke the law in Tennessee, which he did not, and not really what the NBA is going to do. Whether the NBA decided to slap him on the wrist or suspend him for a year is immaterial. What I'm more concerned about is the influence that someone like him has, unfortunately, on a lot of our young people and our young black men in particular who idolize people like him because of course.
I'm with you, Tom, on that.
And that is what I have an issue with.
And certainly I was with the NBA when they suspended him for 7 games for basically pointing a gun at somebody. And that could have been dangerous, so that should have been dealt with. But this particular case, Tom, having a gun and waving it or showing it to somebody, he said he was just showing the gun. He wasn't really like waving it at a crowd or anything. But in a state where this is legal, if it's not a prohibitive action and it's not an illegal action, then I'm not sure if the NBA can govern and restrict that. It's almost like what was the football player here in the Cowboys? He was a safety or a cornerback. He was very good at the time. Pac-Man Jones.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Adam Pac-Man Jones. The
NFL took actions against him, suspended him, almost blew him out the league. I mean, they did for a year before they reinstated him. Tom, because he enjoyed going to strip clubs. You know what I mean? He hung around with some really bad people. He may not have been in the best company, but going to strip clubs and hanging out with bad company was not against the law.
No.
And I certainly thought the NFL was wrong for kicking that man out of the league. This is how men earn a living. And basically they were telling you, we have the right to pick your friend and decide going to a strip club is not illegal.
No.
The friends he was hanging out with was not illegal.
No.
For them to take that kind of corrective action, I see the NBA doing the same thing. Ja did not do anything illegal.
No, he didn't.
So if he didn't break the law, it hadn't hurt anybody, nobody's filing a lawsuit against him, then it's none of your concern. It shouldn't be. Now, us as fans, if we want to hold the brother responsible, to say what you did was irresponsible and you send a bad image, we need to do that and not look to the NBA to do
Well,
that.
that's the point, and that's the point of the conversation.
Okay, then, so we can both agree that the NBA is wrong for trying to intervene in this particular case. They were
Oh, they have
correct
a
in the
right to.
first one.
They have a right to, because he, as you
See,
said.
I don't think they have a right.
But Jimmy, think about this. Well, if they don't have a right, then what did the NFL have a right to do when they had with Colin Kaepernick?
I didn't think it was right for them to do it to Pac-Man
employee
Jones.
He is an employee of the NBA, so yes, they do have a right.
Yes, he's an independent. He's but legally he's an independent contractor. But yes, he does work for the team
Yes,
and for the NFL. And
the
but
NBA.
that doesn't mean as a Tom. I'm a contractor. I've contracted most of my life
Exactly.
for government, for private industry. But that doesn't give the person, the entity that I signed a contract with, the right. There are some code of conduct, contact clauses,
Conduct guidelines.
the conduct guidelines in those contracts. But Tom, that's not giving them the right to pick my friends. That's not telling them the right to tell me I can't go out and drink or go to strip club and make it rain with money. Those are things I want to do that I'm not breaking the law. That's not their concern. But now if I break the law, then yeah, they can use the code of conduct clause to cancel the contract to say, hey, you're not the kind of person that we want working on our projects.
And really what the NBA is doing or has to do is to balance the economic impact, because trust, that's what they pay people hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to do, is balance the economics of what his behavior is going to do, because it ain't even close when it comes to his brand and the Shield. And the reality of it is, if he gets in the way of money for the NBA, that's it. But because he is one of the young, emerging, talented players within the NBA, they gave him a slight slap on the hand. He was only, and I think Jimmy will probably be back in a couple of minutes, but he is not only one of the youngest budding stars of the NBA, but obviously he is going to bring millions of dollars to the NBA, but it's not worth losing it over foolish behavior.
And Tom, they don't draft him. Cancel his contract.
But
just say
you can't forecast what somebody's going to do in the draft.
So just say that you have not proven yourself to be unworthy to be part of our league and boot him out. Don't go through this pretense of trying to exercise some control over my life, my private life, when I'm not breaking the law. I'm not doing anything illegal. It may be ethically wrong, it may be morally wrong, but but you shouldn't be able to govern that over money, because we all work for somebody and get a paycheck. And what would happen if you go to work tomorrow and someone says, "Well, I don't like the church you're going to. We only hire Baptists here. You're a Methodist or you're a Catholic."
Well, they do it anyway, Jimmy. I mean,
we don't like the organization that you're a member of.
It's what we in corporate America call the politics.
Tom, you would be sued out of the universe.
You have a right to do something, Jimmy, but good luck suing the NBA over some foolishness.
All the more reason why, Tom, that we don't allow this type of behavior from our employers to take advantage of us or try to control us in that way. Now, in the workplace, you can set guidelines there. You can dictate my activities. You have a lot of control over me at work. But in my private life is my life. Tom, the only person that has control over that is me. Now, society imposes some rules, but I'm not breaking society rules. I haven't broken no laws. It's by doing what I'm doing. Now, like I said, if we want to hold them as fans, morally responsible, or we want to hold them culturally responsible, Tom, we can speak out against what he's doing. He may not care, which most likely he won't, but still, that's our right as fans.
I mean, he can care less about what an individual says. Really, the ultimate, beginning and end of this is this $200 million 5-year contract that is supposed to be coming up once the season starts this year.
I think most of it's guaranteed, Tom. So
it is, but trust. They have some pretty expensive lawyers, and they can figure out a way if they want to. Because I mean, at the end of the day, I think Nike and Powerade, he has a professional agreement with for endorsement and things of that nature. And they real easy to snap the finger and all that's gone.
Tom, Nike and Powerade are not going to snap the finger and it's going to be gone. They're the ones who encourage this behavior. In fact,
what is it? What evidence did you have that they encourage him flashing guns?
Because there's a rule, Tom, that there's no such thing as bad publicity. And seeing your your star that you signed and given a shoe contract to in the news for whatever reason, short of being an OJ now, that's probably the only bad publicity you can get. But anything short of that, if you're in the news, especially if you're in the news for waving a gun, showing a gun, and playing gangster, this is what these young kids look up to. Oh man, that's the person they really look up to because they aspire to be thugs and gangsters themselves. So being on the straight and narrow and clean cut, the wife and I have been recently watching some of the NBA basketball playoffs, and she made the comment about these beards that these men wear. These men make millions upon millions of dollars, and you telling me you can't go to a barber and get your beard trimmed up and groomed? I mean, it's
Jimmy,
like
that's actually a fashion statement for
yes, it is a fashion statement, Tom, to try to look as toe up and pitiful as possible to maintain a thuggish looking look. And this is what I'm talking
I
about.
don't recall seeing thugs associated with beards.
This is the NBA thug look, Tom,
I,
because there are other people who wear beards like that, and sometimes they wear them long, even in other sports. But it's always trimmed up and
I
neat.
see folks of all ethnicities, all walks of life who wear beards, so I don't know that
Yes,
there's any
that's the NBA thug look, Tom.
yeah, I see all walks of life, black, white, and in between who wear
Yeah,
beards.
I don't see as many tore up beards like that. I see people trying to be neat with their beards, look and be groomed and well groomed.
Bruh,
That's mostly what I
bruh.
see out in public in corporate America. Except when you get to the thugs in the NBA who want to look hard, thinking that this look makes them look hard. When reality, tell me, just makes you look bad. To be totally honest. And but that's the look that they're trying to perpetrate, and that's the look, and they do that
So
not for
what you're
me,
saying
not for you,
are you
not
saying
for other fans. They
are
do
you
it
saying it's
for
thug
the.
for black folks, but not a thuggish for other people? Because I see other
I'm
folks.
saying Thomas Thuggish look for anyone who sports that. Yes, if it doesn't matter what your color is, but it seems like more of our people
But,
seem to be
but,
trying to sport that look than anybody else.
of what consequence is it as it pertains to what they're there to do
Thomas,
in terms of having a beard?
once again, okay, so you're concerned about Ja having a legal right to carry a gun and
Bro, I'm not,
show it,
no, 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 no,
but you say that's
no.
bad, and the NBA should take
Don't
action.
get what I said
But
misconstrued.
but
Jimmy,
somehow
I didn't say
sporting
anything about having the
sporting a
legal right.
thug look.
Jimmy, we live in Texas. It is a right to carry state. I never said anything about his legal right to carry a gun. That was never the issue.
No, you said the NBA was
I
right to
said,
take action
well,
and
they
should take
they
action.
have the right to take the action. He is
So
one
so why not take action on these
He has
beards?
the right to take. The NBA has the right to take action if they
Okay, now
choose.
why not take action on these beards? This is a bad look for young blow boys
Well,
growing up.
he doesn't wear a beard, so what do you mean?
No, I mean for the NBA players, Tom,
I
who
mean,
wear
if they
these
choose to,
beards.
they can.
Uh,
But I don't think they have an issue with guys wearing beards on the court.
okay, so since you feel it's okay for them to take action for a person exercising their legal right, then I'm going to say they should take action and mandate that you go to a barber and trim these beards up
Sure.
and not
Good
be out
luck.
there looking,
Good luck with
out there
that.
looking. So
Good
we
luck.
could join together in this crusade
Yeah. Good
of
luck
having
with
the
that,
NBA
bro.
enforce our mandates.
You gonna be chasing after a bunch of people because I mean you got I think you got more brothers wearing beards than they got with hair on top of
Oh, I
their
don't have a
head.
problem with them wearing beards. Tom,
Yeah,
can they go to a barber shop and get it trimmed up and just have it neat looking by the time you get to the game and get in front of millions of people?
gotcha. Well, I would say this as it pertains to Ja. Getting back to the original premise of the story, you can hang out with whomever you want to. You can do whatever you want to in the confines of your private property, or if you want to go to strip clubs or whatever the case is, that is your business. You have every right to do that. However, he's already been in trouble over this once. He's had 6 incidents within the last year. I think this is maybe the 4th
Right,
one having to do with a firearm, including him and one of his buddies in a car pointing a red dot at
right. Had to tell the team to
at the
bust.
Indiana Pacers. And this is more recently where
Okay, but Tom, that's a laser pointer,
on
and I know some people try to say that
and
this
that
was
is threatening. That is threatening.
a pistol laser, but we don't know that for certain. But we do
But
know
that
it's
is
just
threatening. Why
if
are you going to be pointing a red laser at the opposing team?
it's sending a message, Tom, that I got my eye on you. Yeah, you're in my sight.
Really, no, come on, man.
So it's
Come on.
probably not. It's not behavior, Tom. It's probably behavior that someone should have pulled them aside and just told them that this is not becoming of a person that's in your position. But that action itself wasn't illegal. once again.
No, no, never said it was illegal.
So teams should do a much better job when they draft people of checking their character and not just being overwhelmed by their talent. Because here's the other thing, Tom, that we need to pay attention to. I don't know how much of the NBA playoffs you've been watching, but the wife and I recently have been keeping an eye on Denver and been totally amazed, shocked, and blown away by Jokic, the center there.
Turkish
Yeah,
Democrat.
two-time NBA MVP award winner. I think he came second to
Joel
Philadelphia
Embiid.
center this year.
Joel
And Tom,
Embiid of the Philadelphia
this
76ers.
white European player
By the way.
is balling up, balling out, and balling in.
Mhm.
He is just taking it to every team he plays with. I was like, I'm just amazed. And here's a person that he's had a couple of incidents with some shoving and pushing on the floor, temper-wise, but he's not doing stupid things. But this also just goes to show, Tom, that there's talent out there. I would have never thought that a European player would come over here to America and win. I know Dirk won an MVP award, but back-to-back
You got Dirk,
MVPs.
you got Manu Ginobili. I mean, you got a lot of European players who've been.
You have a lot of European players you're talking about that are balling, but this player is actually dominating at the center spot. So, which is almost unheard of. Most European players are soft and they don't play strong inside.
I would say it's an anomaly. That is an anomaly.
So, but it's starting to show, Tom, that the black basketball talent pool is not the only place you can go get ballers.
Of course
So
not.
this is starting to open the door for people to start looking at other places. So if you have character issues, you want to play thug, wave a gun, pointing at people, put laser pointers on the other team's bus. You want to do stupid stuff like that? Then fine. Then don't draft them. Don't give them $20 million guaranteed contract
You're
and
right.
then try to correct the behavior.
I would agree because this started last year. They could not deny the talent. Obviously, he has a massive following, and the NBA is, at the end of the day, they're about making money. So if they see someone who's going to make him more money, the problem is this: there is a balancing act when it comes to him making money, and then the reputational damage to the brand, and that's what they have to measure. As it pertains to our community, I mean, I thought it was quite interesting. Mike Wilborn, who's probably one of the premier announcers and analysts in the NBA, said he is not going to allow his son to get any of Ja Morant's shoes anymore because he is so disgusted. Okay, it happens once. You go to the clinic for a couple of days. You come back. You say you're sorry. A couple of months later, it happens again. No, that's a different problem. It's not. No.
Okay. Well, I hear him. But young people are still gonna go out and buy the shoe, probably more so now than ever before.
But you got young people with parents, and at the end of the day, parents usually handle the purse strings. And so at the end of the day, that's why it was a long time ago. I think it's probably been at least 25, 30 plus some odd years where, who is it? Used to play for the Houston Rockets, the Phoenix Suns, who says that I'm not your role model.
Charles Barkley.
And at the end of the day, like it or not, these athletes are role models by the fact that young people idolize them. And there is some risk that comes there because they do have an influence, just like actors and entertainers and rappers have an influence on young people as well. That's where we have to be very careful in terms of understanding your first role model should be at home.
Well, Tom, for that to be home, that was the case up until the 1960, when 90%, 95% of black kids were in a home with a mother and a father. That home has been destroyed. The father's been run off. Our women's brains have been poisoned against the man, even more so now that people are not getting married, having kids. So that destruction is well in place now. But, Tom, for that to happen, like you said, for your role models to start at home, you really need a strong man, that alpha male in that home.
Agreed.
To change some of this. So we're going to talk about that next week. I like to get more into this subject of toxic masculinity, Tom, and the attack on the strong black man. Not just strong black man now, just strong men, period. So by that group that you say we well research and read about, but yet we still support, despite the destruction that they reap on our society. But anyway, Tom, we're almost out of time, so
Of course.
let's use this last minute to wrap up Any last comments? Because we don't agree
Well,
on
I
the
think
NBA.
we are out of time for that, Jimmy, because it's 9 o'clock.
It is 9 time, but you know
That's
what?
right.
We on the show, so we can go over a minute or two. So I'm making the executive decision that if you have a last comment you want to make, go ahead and make it.
I would say that I am hoping that everyone has enjoyed the show tonight. We want to thank everyone who has joined us tonight. There are a couple of folks who I do not believe I got a chance to acknowledge earlier. Miss Audrey Booker, Miss Tanya Hall, of course, Miss Alisa Patterson, Miss Carol Wilson joined us tonight on the chat line. We want to thank her. I believe Miss Marion Square. I miss Miss Marion Square. And my good brother, Terrence Tyrone Burton out of Pennsylvania. We want to thank you for joining us tonight. Hidden Treasures ENT. He says, I have a beard and I'm not a thug. Amen, brother. Amen. So I believe I should have acknowledged everyone who joined us tonight. We want to thank, Ephraim Zamil. Ephraim Zamil, he joined us tonight on the chat line. So we had a very, very good dose of feedback from our supporters. We want to thank everyone.
Although no one called in, Tom. So our New Orleans trip, 4 days, 3 nights giveaway, we will carry that over to next week
All right.
show since
Sounds great.
no one decided to call in and try to win the prize.
All right. We want to thank everyone for joining us. Have a fantastic week. Go out and celebrate our good brother El Hajj Malik El Shabazz Malcolm X, whose birthday is on this Friday as well.
With that being said, we'll see you next week, same time, same channel.
Good night, everyone.